People that freak out under pressure are going to drive away their employees.
If you can't manage your emotions, it's very likely you're going to scare people off. Oh gosh, not only do I have to sell the service, I have to collect on it if somebody's not paying, because every dollar matters. Bring the right person to the problem in a timely way. That really stuck with me. It's been several years since I asked him that question. I think I could do it. Things have worked out for me in the past. I've had some challenges, but I think I can change. The jungle is a metaphor for being in a business situation with other people as partners that can have real jungle-like attributes.
Welcome to another episode of the McFarland Method. Today we're going to be talking about what do you do if you are working in a business and you want to buy it?
Oh yeah.
I'll open today. What's that?
No, that's a great topic.
Well, so last night I took my dog to the veterinarian's office because he was due for shots, and got to talking with the vet. Turns out Finnegan has a lot of other health issues that are being persistent. And so we ended up spending like an hour and a half at the vet's office. And I was in between tests and all that. I was chatting with the practitioner, and she mentioned to me that she was considering or working on buying the business, but she didn't really know like how to do it. She's kind of aware, like vaguely, like, oh, I know I need to assemble the team, but I'm not sure who should be on the team and how to find them. And it got me thinking that, like, okay, well, we were just talking about keeping things simple right before the episode. Maybe this is a good time to keep things simple around if you're an active leader in a business and you're wanting to sell or to buy, what should you be thinking about?
Yeah, great question. So this veterinarian expressed an interest in buying the veterinarian practice, small animal vet practice, from the current owner. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like a 40-year practice. I didn't get any of the details on kind of who owns it. It sounds like it's a single owner. It's probably, like a lot of healthcare, private small practices, like practicing doc that owns it. It sounded like that was the situation.
Yeah. Well, from my experience, there's the two perspectives. The first perspective is what's the motivation of the current owner, which might include demographics, like how old are they, and psychographics. How do they feel about practicing veterinarian now? Are they starting to get a little worn out? Is it time? So that if you're thinking about approaching them, it's nice to have a sense of understanding of where they might be coming from, so that your approach is maybe more focused on what you perceive to be their current condition. So we don't know how old the current owner is on this case, do we? Or what their situation is. Right. So let's just say that this person that owns it is maybe the founder, and they're 40 years in the practicing veterinarian. It's timely for them to be looking at a succession. So would be good time for someone to talk to them about what their plans are. So if I was a veterinarian working in a practice like that, I would seek the opportunity to ask the owner what are their plans for the future of the practice and themselves. Do they have a vision for what they'd like to do, and when? Do they have something they're looking forward to doing that they're not able to do now? Most people after 40 years have pretty much done everything you can do professionally, so maybe there's other interests that are compelling them to, or would compel them to consider selling to an existing practitioner.
So you'd start by thinking about the seller, the current owner, and what might they be wanting. That'd be where you'd start. So let's assume then you got that information. I don't think the next step is go talk to them. I think there's really a question of, probably in my mind, is like, is this what I want? Would be, if you're not, I think that's probably a good place for us to turn, is like, how should somebody be thinking about, is this right for them?
Well, I've come up with this way of approaching this, Alex. I call it the ICBM. It's kind of like your own personal missile.
Okay.
The I stands for me as the individual. Do I have the capability to run the business? Have I in the past been responsible for the business when the owner was absent for maybe a vacation or an illness? And have I proven that I can, manage the business day to day? Have I been given that opportunity, or have I run other businesses for other people? And this business may not necessarily have the same opportunity, but I've done it in the past. So do I have the capability to run it? The next is the B, ICB, which is how bankable might I be? And I'm not talking about, do I have the money to buy the whole business now? It's really more a question of, if a banker were to look at my financial condition, my credit score, my savings, which would be what they would be evaluating, would they see me as being a good steward of the resources that I've created for myself as an employee? And then from there, that could lead to becoming a very bankable person, regardless of the amount of money you're seeking. And then finally, we got the M, ICBM, which is, do I have that owner's mindset? Which we've talked about in the past. Like, am I reliably showing up, to meetings, to activities? Am I taking initiative when the opportunity presents itself? Am I supporting teammates outside my responsibility? Do I communicate or show respect for others, letting them know what's going on? And am I a person that can be, relied on not to overreact, blow up in that? So if I go through my assessment, do I have the capability to run it? Have I demonstrated it? Am I bankable to any degree? Not maybe for the full value, but to any degree. And then have I behaved like an owner's mindset, so that when I do approach the owner, they're reflecting on what they've seen, which is primarily 1 and 3, which is capability and mindset. The bankability piece, typically the owner's ignorant to how bankable their potential successor could be. That's something they find out once they get into the discussion.
So I think about so I'll recap that then just from memory. So you've got, am I capable of running the business? Am I running it right now? To what extent am I running it right now? How bankable am I? So what is how likely is a banker to lend me any amount of money? I think is there. And then the last piece was mindset. Do I actually have an owner's mindset, or am I kind of, maybe not, maybe this isn't what and I think it kind of goes into, what do I want? Mindset, motivation kind of coded, in my experience, go together. I'm thinking about, maybe we can come, let's just go right into this part, is what are some of the mirages of mindset where somebody might think that they have an owner's mindset? They think they might be motivated to be an owner, but then the rubber hits the road and they go, oh God, what have I done?
Well, you have indications in your way you handle stress in the past. So there's been, as an employee or manager, leader, whatever your responsibility, how have you managed stressful situations will tell you how likely you are to, let's say, meet the challenge of being totally responsible for the business. So if in the past something bad happened to you in a role that you were playing, or to an employee that was working on your team and serving a customer and did something to disappoint you, how'd you handle that? Tends to be the ones who aren't able to handle those minor uncomfortable challenges have a hard time assuming the mantle responsibility of being the owner and having full responsibility for the organizational success. So that mirage would be, I think I could do it. Things have worked out for me in the past. I've had some challenges, but I think I can change. And it hasn't been my experience that The best time to change your behavior is when you're under so much stress of the stress that comes with debt, which normally when you buy into a business, you are incurring debt, and that debt does adversely affect you.
So you've got, I think you just put that simply, put that in plain people English. Like the reality is probably the amount of pressure that people are under, they underestimate the amount of pressure that they're going to be under to service the debt.
Yes.
And if they're already behaving in a way that makes them think that they're going to need to change, then they probably they're unlikely to succeed in that change under the pressure of the debt. Is that right?
That would be my experience, is that they would behave in such a way that they would perhaps scare off talent in the organization because of the way they responded to the pressure. That's what I have seen, is that they borrow the money to buy into the business, and all of a sudden something happens, and they, as the borrower, feel acutely the anxiety that comes with, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that loan payment if I don't solve this problem or achieve this goal or overcome this obstacle. And now my behavior changes, and I make people around me anxious, uncertain, fearful, and talent tends to flee uncertainty and seek more stable ground. So whenever I'm in a conversation with a potential buyer, I'm asking them to share with me what triggers them and how that triggering results in what kind of response.
I'm going to challenge you here. I just hit me with what you're saying is people that freak out under pressure are going to drive away their employees. Is that kind of the bar version of this?
Yes. So if you can't manage your emotions, then it's very likely you're going to scare people off.
And if you scare people off, then you're not going to be able to service the debt, and then the bank's going to take the business and sell it.
Something like that.
Some version of, yeah. So this really is like a this is real pressure, and there's typically like personal guarantees associated with this too. So I think the key thing is that if you're the kind of person that's not already handling pressure well, in a way that, and well being defined as in a way that draws your team closer to you and to the goals, then adding the dynamic of the debt service or the pressure of the debt service on there is unlikely to spark the change that's going to, I guess, let me just going back to putting it plainly, the debt service pressure is likely to cause you to do things that are going to freak people out and leave.
Yes.
Yeah, I got a little convoluted there, but I think that's...
No, it's either A, you're going to behave in a way that makes people feel unsafe or they can't predict what you're going to do, or B, you're going to internalize it and make yourself sick, which is the alternative.
Okay.
So I would say that the more effective you are at handling pressure, the more likely you are to succeed during that high test period of debt service.
Okay. All right. So that's mindset. The capability thing, like being the operations manager for the business, is not 1-to-1 equal to being the owner of the business. In what ways does a senior leader's role typically differ from the actual owner itself? Like that seems like they're probably close, but not quite the same.
Yeah, good question. So how does a senior leader, their role of responsibility compare to an owner, like the single owner? And it has to do with the scope of the field they have to see. So an owner needs to be able to see the entire field, which involves finance, sales, operations, people, and head of operations is primarily responsible for delivering the service or the good in a timely manner, on schedule and scope, and based on the price that was promised. The most common gap that exists for successors who have been, let's say, line or division leaders tends to be, do I understand how we acquire business, meaning selling, and do I understand how we collect and manage the money that we need in order for us to make payroll and pay the payables and ideally have enough money after all those two to make a principal and interest payment to the bank. So working capital and cash flow are usually the biggest are gaps. So sales and marketing and working capital and cash flow tend to be the two areas I see. So if somebody comes in with finance experience, hallelujah, if they've been running operations, so you don't have to learn that. But in the majority of the management buyouts that we've facilitated, there's been a gap that existed in the successor, either on how do we acquire clients or how do we manage the money.
So sales and marketing on one side, this typically falls outside the experience or the capability, and managing the money. And managing the money is where, I guess, where do we start there? Like, what does that look like? What kinds of challenges is the owner probably after 40 years gotten pretty solid on that might be surprising to a new owner, to a successor owner?
Well, going back to this stressful triggering event, borrowing money, the 40-year owner probably hasn't borrowed any money for a long time, is paying all the bills out of profits that they've earned in the past and have left in the company to manage their working capital. The successor now is borrowing money to make payables current and make payroll, so the employees show up, and then they have to go out and get paid, so they have to go out and collect money. So there's a whole new cycle of responsibility of like, oh gosh, not only do I have to sell the service, I have to collect on it if somebody's not paying, because every dollar matters when you're going through that transition of one owner to another. You got one owner, the current owner, the person who sold or is selling, they don't worry as much about cash flow because they've got plenty of cash in an account in the bank and for the company to manage its day to day, and they've figured it all out. They get comfortable with the goings on of the cash flow. The buyer has to become like a rocket surgeon, if you will, on how do we tweak the collectibles and get paid on time and price products and services so that we are meeting a margin necessary in order for me to make that principal payment to the bank.
Yeah, so that I think that kind of ties in then to the I don't know what the A versus B on this is. I'm thinking to people-driven businesses and systems-driven businesses from the E-Myth, but part of it is there's going to be all this skill development that's going to need to be done under pressure, 40 years versus, hey, I got like quarter one payments due.
Well, what we would try and get the successor into a rhythm with the owner on understanding the financial activities of the business prior to the change of control. So in the McFarland method, we have that, sell some now, pay it off, sell some later, pay it off, and then sell the final amount at the end. And that way the buyers kind of working their way into risk. Starts off with a little risk, buy 20, 25%, learn how the business works alongside the current owner. Once they've got that 20 to 25% paid for, then buy 40 to 60% of the company from the owner. Now they own 65 to 80 some percent of the company and pay that off, and then buy the balance from the owner. And the owner is alongside that person for that cycle of transactions, might be 6-7 years or more. And the buyer's learning how to manage all these financial responsibilities. Yeah.
6 to 7 years. That needs to go in your method. If this is
Okay.
this isn't something you're doing, like I decide that I want to do it in the summer, and then by New Year we're going to be rolling. This is a half decade or more of deliberate work to do this. That seems like you kind of buried the lead.
Yeah, you're right. Time is the essential ingredient in a management buyout where the seller gets paid cash for the business value. And most business owners would prefer to be paid in cash as opposed to be paid in over time through a note. So this is the McFarland method bankable purchase of the business that you work for.
Start the clock, and
Start the clock. Yeah.
yeah.
Because it
So
takes time.
well, it's just, I think what it sounds like is there's a lot of people out there that are talking about how easy it is to buy businesses and to get owner finance, to buy, Cody Sanchez is out there talking about buying owner finance businesses, and she's very good at marketing that approach. But I think based on if somebody listened to this, and they would probably go, wait, the deck's already stacked against me. If I'm currently a leader in the business, I'm going to walk into a business that I'm not acquainted with. I'm going to do this deal, and I'd have no rapport with the owner. It just seems like, to an outsider, I don't deal with this every day, right? This is your world. This seems like a massively complex and high risk transition. And it seems like it's going to take a long time. It's going to be a lot of pressure and a lot of risk. So I go back to your question of what do I want, right? Do I want all that? Or do I want to maybe attempt to serve other people? Am I doing this because this is really what I want? Or am I doing this because I think it's the right thing to do? Or I'm trying to do the right thing by other people? And I think that if an skilled operator looked at that question, I think a lot of them would probably go, you know what? Maybe I don't really want to deal with this. Maybe the juice isn't worth the squeeze here. So, but I think that's probably something that we're going to dive into in the next section when we go into the coaches community. I think when we did prep, you talked that you've got a couple of cases going on right now about mid-transition complexity and the changing tides. So, you want to wrap this and kind of give us our final thoughts, and then we'll go over to the coaches group.
Well, yeah, I want to address the Cody Sanchez example, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
If you sell your company to somebody on a note and the seller finances the transaction, you tend to give your company over to that buyer for a fraction of its value. If you sell it over the course of 7 years, and you're basically getting 14 to 15% of your company's value in year one, but you're giving over control of that company to that buyer. That to me seems like a lot of risk, because now I'm giving control over to someone. And if in Cody's case, these are people that don't presently work there. This is you going out finding a desperate business owner who wasn't able to put together a plan, and they agree to sell you their company on a note, and instead of you giving them cash, you give them 1/10 or 1/7 of the business value in the first year, but you've given up control. That to me sounds like the riskiest deal possible. Selling to management on the 1-2-1 method is almost guarantees the seller gets paid, and never gives up control until they've gotten nearly 80% of the value out of the business. That sounds like a thoughtful approach to exiting your company and selling it to the people who know it best, which banks like that. Banks like the buyer knowing the business a lot better. That's why the banks aren't financing a lot of these deals where the buyer doesn't know the business, because they're not sure they can run it. So the seller has to finance it. So, yeah, that would be my perspective on that, is that if you want to sell to insiders, the 1-2-1 does it for you really well and helps you get paid in cash using bank financing.
Yeah, so that I think that 1-2-1 we could kind of come back to that. You teased that. I think the easy way. I think I'm gonna, on behalf of the audience, I'm gonna ask you to use round even numbers that are probably not as accurate, but are more palatable or like kind of simpler for us. That for these numbers are new to. So you sell a quarter of the company, then they pay that off. You sell them half of it, another 50%. 2 quarters. Now you've got 3 quarters that you sold. You still go holding on to a quarter, and then at the end you sell that last bit.
Right.
Is that okay? Yeah. No,
And it's been my experience that that's a bankable structure.
that the banks are willing to underwrite that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap it there. So I appreciate you sharing that perspective. I think it's a tough question to answer. Is this what I want? So, but I think we were able to raise some interesting thoughts. I think we barely scratched the surface on this topic in terms of all the different angles. We didn't talk about professional services relationships. We didn't talk about sales, and we just said that it's an issue. We talked about the financing. I think that anybody that's had to make payroll knows that can be a more complicated thing than just, boy, I don't have enough money this week. Like, how making payroll then becomes, how do I go get that money? So anyway, I think that's a lot of rich stuff for us to cover. And I think we're kind of dive a little bit deeper into some of this in the coaching segment. So if you're a coach that's working with somebody who's thinking about buying a business, these are the kinds of conversations that we're having in the McFarland Method coaching community. Byron's going to walk through some specific cases in the group. So if you're a member or interested in becoming one, find us on LinkedIn at the McFarland Method, and let's make that transition.